Hi, everyone. So I would like to continue from the last talk, hopefully a short video. The previous talk that I want to finish is on the nature of suffering and the difference and overlap between the process of healing as well as the process of awakening. So if you see this, you come to this video, you can watch this, but I encourage you to see part 1. Yeah, so I want to touch now on these 3 ideas. There are 2 types of suffering. We can categorize them as this is a term from the Gurdjieff work. This is unnecessary, self-created suffering, which we do to ourselves and which is optional. And then there's real suffering, and they call it real or necessary suffering, which is unavoidable, and it's part of the process of being on the planet here in the body, and it is actually useful. Gurdjieff was saying, let me give you some examples. So the unnecessary self-created suffering is which actually is a much more amount of that. So we have much more self-created unnecessary suffering. I would say like 90% of our suffering is self-created and unnecessary. And maybe 10% of it is actual real suffering. Or sometimes, okay, give you an example. Also, Gurdjieff was saying that one of the most difficult things for people to give up is their imaginary self-created suffering. You know, all of that, all of this, they give an example, like all of that preoccupation with what other people think about me and wanting to be liked, wanting to be given the right dues, wanting people to approve of me, to appreciate me, to respect me, and trying very hard to not be rejected or to be judged, and therefore changing myself in a certain way to get that result, which will bring me imaginary peace and stability. So that is it's stressful, and it takes a lot of energy, as our God-given energies, instead of being used for deepening, developing ourselves or doing something useful in our life, we are dancing around just getting approval and being liked. The ego wants to do that, you know. Another one type of unnecessary imaginary suffering is taking things personally, you know, and making everything about us, and wanting reality to be in a certain way somehow, and wanting people to be in a certain way, and wanting the whole world to be in a certain way that corresponds to our imaginary conditioned ego ideas. You know, that's not going to work. And wanting people not to cut in traffic, not to do this, and they shouldn't be like that, things they shouldn't be, and I should be like this, and they shouldn't. This is imaginary, self-created, unnecessary suffering. Ultimately, the deficiency story identity, like all of these beliefs, which, I mean, there's innocence. There's an innocence behind all of that. Nobody's doing it on purpose, man. Nobody's doing it because we are bad or stupid. We are doing this because the whole culture and society is overall unconscious and asleep from the point of view of spiritual development. And our parents were raised in this culture, and we got wounded, traumatized, hurt, and we developed this embroidery. Basically, this embroidery that the child consciousness, this kind of negative imagination about oneself, as they call it in the 4th way. There's something wrong with me. I can't do it. I'm less than. I am not worthy. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of care. I'm not worthy of respect. I can't be angry. I can't be sad. All of this, there's something wrong with me. It's not safe to be myself. Initially, all of this come from, as I said in a previous video, some hurt and some the child being shocked and then adapting to it. But then these are the roots of it. But then later these roots sprout these flowers of negative beliefs about myself. And so the ego or the false personality is like a it's a cocktail or embroidery of all of this sense of me as a ego, me as a, not me as the presence that we are, me as this imaginary picture of myself. I'm better, I'm worse, I'm not enough, I'm too much, I'm too little. All this comes of about 15, 20 flavors, like ice cream. That is totally imaginary suffering, which can be actually torturous. Actually, it's torturous. People come here, sit on a couch, suffering with this suffering, which actually, you know, what I'm saying, imaginary suffering, because all of that is not true. All that stuff in the head is not true. And it's that I am not enough, I am this, I am that. That I is an imaginary I. It's a story, you know, the imaginary story, identity story, mind made sense of me. So the mind made sense of me is an imaginary, unnecessary, self-created suffering. Through healing work, it can diminish a lot, processing trauma and skillfully psychosomatic processing, those can diminish a lot. So now if one goes further into consciousness work combined with healing work, and, you know, practicing form of mindfulness as well as meditation, as well as a form of self-observation and presence practices, and investigating our ego. And, you know, so if one goes beyond just healing and wanting to have a better life, if one goes into this, say, awakening, evolutionary teachings, combined with the processing of our subconscious and of our pain body, that can diminish a lot. It's just, so you don't have that anymore. It's so nice not to be tortured by this stuff. It's like a, you know, we come back again to a nature, to essence, and an essence that is conscious of itself. And, you know, you think of the tiger or an elephant, they are just being themselves. They are themselves doing what they need to do. A tiger or an elephant, they don't have this like, oh, it's like I'm too fat, or I'm too slow, or my stripes are not right, and I don't know if I'm going to make it. You know, this is all this embroidery of the ego. And that through skillful healing work, consciousness work can drop. So then that's the unnecessary self-created suffering. Real suffering, yeah? Real suffering is necessary. And it's a way to wake us up. Real suffering is meant to wake us up and show us what we are doing to ourselves, or it shows us something about the nature of the impermanence of the body, and not putting our investments in this temporary world. So, and it's hard, you know, like basically real suffering is connected to sickness, old age, death, and loss. And everything that we love is going to die. Everything we love, we're going to lose. Yeah, and that's painful, to have a relationship that you love and the person dies, or it just finishes, or it's really painful. It's like we are feeling souls, really feeling souls, and all of this hardship, and even seeing what we are doing to each other, seeing what's happening, how people that are asleep and with a frozen conscience, they are hurting each other, killing each other, and what they're doing to the planet, and just this loss and hardship. It is painful, and it is painful. So it's not imaginary, and it cuts on the heart. And however, as they say, Rumi, the great Sufi master, would say that suffering is like being washed by God. So it's if it is met in a conscious way, suffering, real suffering, it is a deepening of our soul, and can be used, the energy of suffering, if it is met by acceptance, complete acceptance, and met with grace, which would be accepting it and allowing it to burn, allowing it to move through. If your father or mother dies, or your lover dies, or it's just sad, and grief and loss. Yeah, and it's very hard to basically, on the fourth way, they call it to transform suffering, transmuting real suffering into higher states of being and deeper wisdom. It is hard because we are so trained to avoid. All the ego wants to avoid unpleasantness, wants to avoid suffering, wants to avoid unpleasant sensations, want to escape, to calm it, to just smoke, drink, go dating, whatever, drugs, chocolate, escape. The whole ego is a resistance to feeling. The ego doesn't want to feel bad, and so to transmute or transform real suffering is actually a very advanced level of being. In order to do that, we need to have what is called more of this presence, conscious presence online. And in the fourth way, the idea was that one's evolutionary awakening path hinges on these two types of engines: self-remembering and transformation of negative emotions and transformation of suffering. Self-remembering is connected to some kind of waking up, being more conscious of what's happening, being more conscious overall, conscious of our thoughts, conscious of our feelings, conscious of our desires, conscious of our lies, and conscious of our contradictions and all of that, and ultimately leading to the discovery that there is more to us than these thoughts and this ego, and to the discovery that there is this presence, this aware being, which is actually right now hearing these words, and this feels sensations in the body. And so the self-remembering ultimately is connected to the self, the true self, not the story of me, the true self, consciousness waking up to itself. And as they call in the fourth way, it's the real I is being awakened, which was dormant, which changes the whole thing. And however, this is long, arduous work, Anyway, so it requires a lot of presence and wisdom and self-remembering in order to meet this real suffering with grace and accept it and let it wash through. And that actually deepens our sense of wisdom and our understanding of reality, and propels us kind of deeper, opens our heart more, cleans our bullshit, increases our ability to love. Often this, often we have a real shock, a real suffering, you know. We lose somebody in our life, or something happens that is a actual real suffering. But then on top of that, it's embroidered imaginary suffering. So give you an example, like one can have somebody dies or something happens, and we can have like a few hours or a few weeks or a few months of pain washing through, you know, grief and all of that. However, because we are so much resisting, we are resisting this kind of stuff. The ego is uncomfortable with emotions, doesn't want to feel. Also, this is a transmission from our parents, transmission from society. Everybody is resisting unpleasantness, you know. So because we resist that, we resist grief, we try to feel better, we try to be hopeful and positive and, you know, keep going, which, you know, it's legitimate in some way. Then we push down that actual finite amount of grief. And though this grief, instead of lasting for maybe like a few weeks or a few months, it can last for 20 years, man. And it's embroidered with like, yes, and they died, and it's because I wasn't good enough and I'm unworthy and I will never find anybody else and my life is over, you know. It's embroidered with this storyline, the story and the story and the story, which creates more pain, and we can be tortured. I will never trust anybody again. I will never love again. You know, the ego likes to make this a painful, tortured embroidery, you know. So instead of having a suffering that lasts for maybe a few minutes, it lasts for many hours, or instead of a few weeks, lasts for many years, you know. So yeah, so I think I will stop here with this part, and I think I'll make a part 3 to go into traps connected to the healing path of awakening path, where although we have good intentions and we work hard, we are just taking the bait of some misunderstanding, and then we delay it. We just delay it and stay stuck in some kind of partial healing, or into some more awakened with bypassing, or into some being positive and good vibes only, you know. I live in a new agey hippie town here, which, you know, I love, but I see this all the time. Well-meaning and good people applying some teachings which are distorted, and this is going to block them. And yeah, so stay tuned. Ciao.